I guess the other interesting thing, Neil, too, is that these guys are trying to get as much development into these new cars before they head to Adelaide. And obviously, wet conditions is going to help at some degree, but a lot of them would prefer to be spending more time in the dry and adjusting those new cars for Adelaide.
How long have you had an official brolly holder, mate?
Yeah.
It's great, isn't it? I need her all day today.
One of the best things, Daryl, is that it's a lot of water on that lens, and we probably couldn't see you as well as we should have, which is kind of nice for us.
He started to blur and dribble, didn't he?
Well, he does that a lot, doesn't he? So here we go. They're gridding up now in what could only be described as awful conditions, and that's the view from the cockpit of Mark Scaife. So it gives you an idea of exactly what he's looking down the barrel at. Along the main straight, he'll start from way back through the field in position number 18. There's Stephen Johnson. Rusty.
Richo, you're on the wets, ready to go. Your old sparring partner across on the left here. What's it going to be like down at turn 1?
Oh, mate, really, we're just going to try and play it straight. Get through turn 1 and just see how it goes from there. We haven't been in the wet here, obviously, since last year, so really just want to keep it off the walls, mate, bring it home straight.
Is bringing it home straight all about Adelaide? Your focus is obviously on that, the first round of the championship in a fortnight?
Yeah, for sure. We've had a good weekend today. It'd be a shame to spoil it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
He's already had a third and a second in the 2 races that we've had Stephen Richards, and has been duelling with his former teammate Russell Ingall, and as Rusty said, he now finds himself side by side with the enforcer. Daryl Beattie's got Paul Radisich with him.
Paul, new car, a few little gremlins. You got a bit of a drama now.
It looks that way, Daryl, just pulling out of the pits there, and all of a sudden there's oil smoke. It's just turning left to right, the power steering feels like it's failed, so hopefully they can get it right. If it stays wet, at least I'll be able to wrestle with it, but let's hope we can get it fixed.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Daryl.
Now, the grid spot that's directly beside Stephen Johnson here is earmarked for Craig Lowndes. As you'll notice, there is no car there at the moment, so we'll keep an eye on what's happening with Craig. But at the moment, no luck in that regard. Steve Johnson, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, mate, it always seems to happen on this Sunday race here at Albert Park, but I guess it's throwing in a bit of an unknown with the race, and with these new cars in the wet, we'll see how they go.
You've worked enormously hard on your fitness over the course of summer, and what a great debut for the team with this brand new car. You've progressively chipped away at it and worked your way up to a good grid spot for the final one.
Yeah, mate, it's been pretty tough, you know, for the guys, especially over the Christmas period. But you know, they've done a great job with this car, and we had a tough drama in qualifying with the engine problem. So, you know, we're up here and we're going good.
Best of luck.
Thanks, mate.
Mark, it's not a spot you want to be down the back here, especially in the rain with that mist around.
Mate, I tell you, I prefer to be right here than sitting in pit lane like you.
How's things as far as development going with the new car?
Yeah, we've got plenty of speed. You know, we were in traffic yesterday and pretty much set equal fastest lap of the race. So, yeah, we've got a great car. We've just got to get it consistent, and you know, we've had a pretty bad weekend with electrical problems and whatnot, and it's really hurt us, but at least it's a non-championship race. This race I'm looking forward to because we get our first run in the rain. Starting at the back, you know, I've got no one going to run into me. So, you know, as long as I don't rush into the corner too fast, it should be okay.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
He'll start from position number 27, and Craig Lowndes will start from pit lane along with Anthony Tratt. The rain is coming down, but the racing is about to happen on your home of motorsport. Wets and wipers are essential today. Ahead of them is 10 laps in the NetSpace V8 Supercar Showdown, but what is behind them at the moment is real trouble. At turn 16, a major oil spill. We'll talk to you about that shortly. Here's your starting grid. Russell Ingall and Stephen Richards side by side, 1 and 2. Jason Bright and Jason Barguana, 3 and 4. John Bowe and Stephen Johnson make up an all-Ford row there. Craig Lowndes will start actually from pit lane. Greg Murphy from position 8. Positions 9 and 10 belong to Dean Kanto and the Ford Performance Racing AU of David Bernard. 11 and 12 is Paul Dumbrell, making his full season debut for Castrol Perkins Racing and Rodney Forbes. Max Wilson has moved to Shell Helix Racing for this season, the Brazilian, and Rick Kelly has a seat at the Kmart Racing car number 15. Paul Morris is the leading VY Commodore on the grid. Paul Radisich will actually also start from pit lane. There's Mark Scaife in position number 18, the 35-year-old with 5 championships under his belt. Cameron McConville in car number 3 from position 19, and Mark Larkin will start from 20. Greg Ritter has the green-eyed monster for this season. Bradley Jones in car 21 and position 22. The all-team dynamic, positions 23 and 24 of Jason Richards and Simon Wills. Anthony Trapp and Jamie Whincup with his debut in the V8 Supercar season full-time. There's Marcus Ambrose and Team Kiwis Craig Baird in 28th position. Now, they're working around on this warm-up lap, but by the time they get to turn 16, Neil, they're going to be met with one hell of a disaster waiting to happen, because oil left behind from Paul Radisic's car is strewn across right on the racing line.
And there's no shortage of it. As we look at them there, they're exiting turn 10. Here it is. Have a go at it. It's the Exxon Valdez. There is oil everywhere, and it's right on race line. And then Paul's recognised that he's had a problem. He's pulled across to the right, but there's lots of it. And one of the things that's difficult from the angle that we're looking at this, it's quite obvious, but you don't see it the same way when you're sitting in the race car, Greg.
Neil, I can tell you the hood is up on the better electrical Ford of Paul Radisic. It's in fact a power steering leak, so the team trying to fix that here. What's been interesting as well is the way the other teams have reacted to the news of this oil slick. Russell Ingall has said to the Stone Brothers Racing outfit, let's try a bit of NASCARing here. If you know that it's starting to clear, get on the radio and tell me it's clear when we're coming through that final turn.
Speaking a bit of NASCAR, what's a hood, Rusty? You've been watching those American races, haven't you?
I think we're gearing up for a bit of good old boys today, aren't we? Stephen Johnson, car number 17. There's Mark Scaife. He's had a real handful this weekend.
He's got the demister switched on to try and clear the mist on the screen, but the visibility from that car was shocking then, and it gets even worse once the mist goes up from the car in front. And even though you know, when you sit here and you look out the box or look through these screens at the moment, you think it's all grey. It actually turns all brown, and you just end up in, oh, someone has gone off. It's Dean Kanto's looped it on the warm-up lap and done pretty substantial damage. Ripped the splitter off the front of it and got it parked off to the side there. He's gassed it up on cold tyres, and it's flicked around and nailed the wall. It's actually given the thing a tweak in the left rear as well. And have a look at that left rear wheel. It's breaking something down the bottom of the diff housing there. Whoop, round it goes. On the ripple strip is when he's done it. And whack.
That's the exit of turn 13 where he's gone there. Oh,
very, very, very easy to do. Cold tyres, painted ripple strip, and there's no grip available at all on the paint. And it's actually very often freshly painted overnight so that the circuit presents beautifully, particularly for international television between Saturday and Sunday. So that's very bad news for him. They'll actually have to clear that car, which will delay the start, I imagine.
Pity for Dean Kanto, because he's come here and had not a bad weekend. He qualified 21st, moved up 10 positions in race 1, and was in the top 10 here after a 9th placing in race 2. So young Dean Kanto, who's been rewarded for persistence and patience in V8 Supercar with a full-time drive at Team Better Electrical.
He'll be feeling pretty heavy at the moment. He'll be about 100 kilos heavier than he was a minute or two ago, because that's a drama, and you can see, as I pointed out, there's very likely that we're going to have a delayed start. Greg?
Just down here with John Briggs, the team owner for Better Electrical. Just tell us what's happened here as far as Dean's concerned.
Dean's just had an off. Problem with Paul's car right now, we've popped a pressure sensor off the power steering pump. They're trying to put a cap on it now, take the sensor off and put a cap over the top of it, which I think we can probably do. It's just a question of whether we can do it quickly enough to start from the pit lane.
Such a shame, because you've done a terrific job to get 2 BA Fords, you know, prepared and ready in time for Albert Park.
Sometimes there's no justice, is there? Yeah.
There's a bit of a queue forming up here at the pit lane exit as well, and there's Craig Baird, Craig Lowndes in front of him, Anthony Tratt in front of him. And what happens here, Matty, is that this race meeting is distinctly different in its format to a traditional race meeting. When you come out of the pits normally, you're able to cycle around, come in, make any changes, and then you go out, you do your formation lap and go. But here, when you come out of the pit paddock, you go to the grid, you do your warm-up lap and you go. And I think what's happened here is that some people have misunderstood the situation and gone, oh, look, we'll have a think about slicks, maybe put wets on if it's wet enough. And they've come out and been told, well, that's it, buddy, you start from the pit lane. So they've rattled the wets onto it, and now they have to fire off the back of the grid. And that's, well, in a short race like this, that's a disaster.
Put you into perspective, you've got the V8 paddock on the other side of the pit lane where the Formula One cars, of course, operate out of. V8 has its own paddock here at Albert Park. Rusty?
just down back on the grid, guys. It sounds from the officials like this will obviously be, as you say, a full race restart. Murph, what are the conditions like out there? A couple of guys have gone off unbelievably on the warm-up lap.
Yeah, I find that a little bit strange. The track's not that bad. It's wet, and it hasn't been wet since we started racing on Thursday. So, I didn't find it too bad. It's typically pretty slippery, but I saw Kanto spin off behind me and hit the fence. So he may have hit the curb or something. Obviously, you want to stay off those painted curbs.
Has Rob and the boys been on the radio to you just in relation to the power steering fluid, which is down at turn 16, which has come from Paul Radisic's car? What does it look like as you drove through?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, they did mention something about some oil down there, so is that what it is? Well, thanks for informing me. I'll take it cautiously from here on in.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Well, Greg was onto it, because if you put a tyre on those painted ripple strips, then, it's just so easy to turn a car around. They've got zero grip underneath you. Darren Walter there just saying hello to Craig Lowndes, who in turn says hello to us. And hello, mate. Enjoying it out there. He won't be in a minute because he's going to be buried in the mist. It's pretty slippery, although as Murph pointed out just a moment ago, the on-track condition's not too bad. It's reasonably predictable, and there's not a lot of standing water out there at the moment, but it's just if you get to the verges, that's when you're in strife.
Daryl Beattie.
I guess, the oil may be a bit of a drummer, but the curbs are going to be nice and slippery.
Yeah, actually, you can't believe it. On the warm-up lap, I got on one of those white lines and actually turned me around. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be the survival of the fittest out here because of the oil that is coming onto the straight. So you're going to have to be very careful. And actually, we've all got in our minds in 2 weeks' time the start of the championship.
Visibility-wise?
I don't think visibility will be too bad because the circuit is draining off pretty well because it's got so much rake on it. So I don't think the visibility is going to be too much.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
And Jason Bargwanna, if we cast our minds back in the wet last time at Indy, you did pretty well. Is this something that's going to suit Jason Bargwanna in the Ford?
Ooh, there's a lot of expectation there, isn't there, really? I mean, don't put the moz on me, will you? No, look, obviously I enjoy racing in the wet, but I haven't driven this car in the wet yet, so we've had a bit of problem with the brakes over the last couple of days. We just have to wait and see how it goes and see if we've got the brakes right, and that'll obviously help us in the wet too.
Preparation for Adelaide, how is it looking as far as this team is concerned?
Look, the guys made the decision that we're going to start the year with the AUs at the moment. They could have worked 24 hours a day and had a BA ready, but they've made, I think, a wise decision to obviously produce us a package that we'll go to Adelaide with and hopefully be reliable, be strong, be competitive and get a good result.
Best of luck today.
Thanks a lot, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
They're trying to clear out Dean Kanto's car. One of the BA models already has bit the dust before this race. A simple driver error on the warm-up lap. So a bit of a race delay before the Netspace V8 Supercars showdown gets underway. On the other side of the break, we'll have it. The V8 Supercar showdown has now been reduced to a 6-lapper. So they've cut 4 laps out as a result of Dean Kanto's misdemeanor, and they've now cleared his car out of the way. We can also tell you that Paul Radisic's car has been fixed, so he'll start. And a long list of people now joining pit lane.
And Matthew, you know what the new lead item is going to be on the news tonight? That after 20 years of professional motor racing, Glenn Seaton's wearing a full-face helmet. I can't believe it. He was so vehemently opposed to the notion of having a full face on, and in that interview earlier, he's finally made the change.
He was hanging on to that old helmet, wasn't he?
Yeah, the last of the Mohicans.
And it did sort of give you a throwback to days of yesteryear when you saw him in the cockpit. Now these guys look more like Darth Vader. Stephen Johnson.
It's good that Paul Radisic is able to get back out there, and very often these cars, just periodically at least anyway, just have power steering glitches, and everybody always howls engine failure, but it's very often not, and they've got that rectified. But as you quite rightly pointed out, as we look at the onboard shot there with Mark, there's quite a queue at the pit lane exit, and in a 6-lap wet race around a 5.3 kilometre circuit, don't expect these fellas to make too much progress, and that is a typical wet track view. Very, very hard to see, and these cars are crawling around at less than typical road car speed at the moment. Once they attempt to try and generate real pace, the whole place just turns into a giant misty mess. The good news is that we're hearing reports that The weather is clearing slightly. I don't think these drivers are going to get a great benefit from it, but here's hoping that the 2003 Foster's Australian Grand Prix is not going to be a totally wet affair.
Won't stop the crowds, there's no question about that. We've got southerly winds blowing through, so maybe we should give Tassie a call and see what's happening down there and get the forecast that way. But it appears to be clearing up anyway right now, and we understand that it's stopped raining, stopped bucketing down, if you like, in pit lane. Stephen Johnson, we saw before, he touched on a thing in an interview with Rusty earlier when he mentioned about the engine problems they had. They actually blew up an engine on the Thursday session here. They had a misfire when they tested that car number 17, and then it just popped when they came out on Thursday for the practice session. It's only done around 30-odd laps before it got here, so he qualified 15th, took it up to 9th in race 1, up to 6th in race 2. So some good signs finally for Dick Johnson racing fans and Stephen Johnson racing fans.
Just talking on the subject of weather, the air temperature out there at the moment is 16. The track's actually a fraction hotter at 17, so it still retains some heat, and the humidity's up to 88% now, and it's actually the wind that's a bit breezy out there. But just looking down towards the south and the southeast, it definitely does look a little better, and that's good. And I understand that the rain has stopped. Those of our crew that are standing down there in pit lane at the moment can pick that up for us, but it's still going to be a very, very slippery affair when they get down to turn 1. What's really difficult about these situations, Matthew, is that you've got to kind of, depends on where you are in the field. If you're up the front, you can just make your own judgments in terms of where to brake, but all of your decisions about braking and positioning the car, accelerating the car, to some extent have got to be reactive based on what's going on around you as we look at the Melbourne skyline. And it's very, very difficult because it's so easy to lock a brake and cannon into somebody totally unintentionally. You pick up a little white line somewhere, or you put a wheel off on a curb, and obviously it can have catastrophic results, turn people around, and then it's all the triggering stuff that goes on behind that creates the drama.
Let's crystal ball turn 1 in around about a minute or so's time.
Horror story.
What are the odds of everyone getting through?
Oh, fairly low, but you know, now because you say that, they will get through.
Yeah, exactly. There's Russell Ingall. He'll start from pole position. You saw the emotion that I talked about with Billy Woods earlier. He's really fired up, Rusty.
Yeah, the trick in wet weather starts is not too many revs, because the last thing you need is bags and bags and bags of wheel spin. We are set for a start.
Yeah, it took a while. The rain is coming down at Albert Park, but here we go. Sunday is the day, and the V8 Supercars get us roaring into race day. Stephen Johnson shoots across to his left and now darts back to the right, but Ingall has got clear road. Turn 1 is where it all comes down. Here we go. 3 will not go into that, and it looks as though Jason Bright got caught in the crunch there. Ingall, Greg Murphy, Stephen Richards, Johnson on the outside. It looks pretty good.
I think they got through there, which is remarkable. There was a bit of biffo in that minor position, and look at that for a mist cloud.
Down to turn 3, the right-hander, back down to around 65, 70 Ks. Oh, it's all dicey. Skating on ice, and one of the Orcons has gone. That's Bargwanna, just got a little bit loose. Mark Scaife and Greg Murphy made up 2 places. Rodney Forbes turns his around, as though Jason Bargwanna went spearing off to the right, and his team boss, Mark Larkham, got through comfortably. So there's Murphy, and now Stephen Richards do battle. The exit of turn 6, Jason Bright.
He's been elbowed a couple of places back, and Jason's actually fared pretty poorly in the opening couple of corners here. Richards applying pressure to Murphy, who just tries to squeeze across and take some road, but Richards goes down the inside and pulls off that move. Good move. Listen to Greg, judicious on the throttle. Both cars twitching at the same time. Now Murph gets a little run on Stephen. Challenges up on the outside for the run to 11. And Richards' car cranks sideways through the turn. Murph rounds him up. Can Stephen go down the inside? He's ideally positioned. Contact. Round goes Murphy.
Oh, sends one of the witches hats screaming and rejoins the race as well. That was always going to happen. You just had an awesome view. The witches hat is sitting there right at the end of turn 13, turn 12 rather, and the result of all that is that Russell Ingall still is out there with clear road, and the 2 guys who are fighting behind him have now spun each other around.
And there's not a team manager or an engineer in the pit lane at the moment not frantically chewing nails because they're going, come on guys, we've got to get these things to Adelaide in 10 days' time. Don't turn them into a bucket of bolts, please.
Jason Bright is dicing now for position with Stephen Johnson. This is exactly what happened.
Oh dear. 50-50, a bit difficult to pick that one, isn't it, one way or another? Stephen on the inside, trying to hang on to position from where he's sitting. He figures he's far enough up the inside. Murph, however, he's thinking, well, I've got to get across to the left. I need to be close to the race line here. I'll drift wide. And invariably, with not enough room there, contact is made and around they go. And Max Wilson tours the gravel pit in car number 18, and that was on the exit of turn number 1. Remember, this is a reduced race, and unless you're an absolute front runner here, not a lot of point in taking high risks for low reward.
Now up to turn 3, and Murphy again finds himself under pressure. Paul Dumbrell goes through, and Mark Scaife has gone roaring up the charts. He's into 10th position. The order after lap 1, Russell Ingall, Stephen Richards and David Bernard make up your top 3. Rusty?
Jason Barguana's come in, guys, and he's described the steering to the team as it's steering like a pig at the moment. So they're trying to figure out what may have caused this unexpected problem for car 10.
Well, I saw him copping a bit of a belting there in the opening lap, so I suspect that what's happened is it's had some kind of effect on the toe or the steering, and they're just looking around under that car there at the moment. So he's ended up with a bent steering arm or something of that nature, Greg. And his day is certainly done. And you're not going to get out there and do anything with that at this point. Oh. Morris down the inside of Bow. McConville in there having a look as well, trying to make an opportunity out of the fact that Paul was able to make space. That's Ritter tucked in behind in the 0-0 car. And this is the foggy run down to 11 and 12. This is where the contact was between Richards and Murphy. Again, it's... the race line ultimately narrows off there, and there's really only one way through there, and that's why there's catastrophes. Look at this little replay of the aggravation here. Whack, whack, whack.
There's contact between Paul Morris and Mark Scaife. Just watch the end of Mark Scaife's car there, and the black car comes into it.
Dumbrell was the one that was rushing down the inside, and there was a whole series of little events that triggered as a result of that. Meanwhile, Russell just cruises along. He's got a huge gap.
Russell, 3.5 seconds.
There you go. Thanks for explaining. And that's a pretty handy lead. And I'd say that that's extended. In fact, it has. The official timing now as he crosses the line shows that he pulled more time on that lap out to 4.2. So that car works well in the wet and the dry, and we need to log that in our minds for a little later in the year. He's also got clean air, which is a critical thing. And the fastest man on the road at the moment is actually David Bernard, who's moved up to 3rd, and then Dumbrell runs wide into the kitty litter. So David Bernard has had a pretty good weekend in terms of his recovery, Matthew. Oh, Dumbrell around. And there's more to that story because there's some damage there in the front right corner.
There you go.
Yeah,
there's the big story. There's a wheel gone loose, and that is Paul Morris's Sirame Wines VY converted car, and it's a real mess. Smoke pouring out the rear, out the front. Let's just hope that Paul Morris is okay.
It's a huge shunt.
That's big time.
Front left wheel and bits of the wishbone and brake ducting have all gone, and the red flags come out. So just, this has happened before here in this event on Sunday morning where it's turned into something of a catastrophe. So the red flag goes out. I doubt very much whether this event will be restarted. I think it's game, set, match for V8 Supercar this morning. And a few people will probably be quite happy about that. Get them packed up, get them in the trucks and get them out of here.
Well, the safety guys are there quite quickly. It's in the cockpit where they go straight away and just make sure that Paul Morris is okay. Now let's dissect all of this. We saw Paul Dumbrell go off, and then there was trouble. So
he may have come back out in front of Morris, I'd say, but look, we won't preempt it. Let's wait for the pictures to tell the story.
I think if you keep
he just came out and they made contact.
And then obviously straight into the wall on the right-hand side of the track for Paul Morris.
And everybody else scrambles to avoid the drama. Pretty hard to pick a line through there, and Morris made big contact with the concrete wall on the right-hand side. So we were missing the little middle segment of that where Dumbrell was just coming back on, and not enough margin between the cars.
Well, for a split second, it looked as though Paul Dumbrell had escaped. empty-handed from his little off, and then...
Gee, that's got a lot of damage on it. There's now, we talked before about the nightmare between the two events. Look at the damage. Start adding up the dollars on that one.
No thanks.
And, you know, you've got that team's based on the Gold Coast, so with major repair work like that, you've got to go back to square one. Incidentally, the declaration has been made that insufficient ground has been covered to declare this a race, so it doesn't officially even exist in the books at the moment. No winners or otherwise, so just a non-event, literally.
It was like that from the word go, wasn't it? We had problems as they gridded up, problems as they warmed up, and then big problems when they finally got out there and started throwing these V8 supercar machines around. There's Paul Dumbrell walking away from the scene of the crime, if you like. Obviously, it was just a case of Paul Morris couldn't get out of his way. Thankfully, Morris is out of the car. That was clearly an almighty hit that he had at the end of all that mess. Morris's front right is damaged, but nowhere near to the extent that Morris's VY Commodore, which was the leading performer of the new style Commodore all the way across the weekend, in fact, and it stopped us talking about a good performance from David Bernard. The times, obviously, bigger blowouts than what we had across the good condition races for races 1 and 2, but Bernard had just posted a 2:23.377 to move up into 3rd position. He started from 10th, and I can tell you 2 days ago when I was down there having a chat to David Bernard in the newly created FPR team, he said to me, I'm still getting to know these guys. You know, there's all these new guys here. I'm still getting to know the car, the guy who's tuning it for me, absolutely everything. This is all brand new. The start, go back to turn 1, and this might give us some clue as to what happened with Paul Dumbrell.
This is just some of the aggravation throughout the race, I think, Matthew.
That was Max Wilson?
Yep, Max's little tour through the blue. That's a lot of damage on that car. That's... Darryl, what have you got for us?
Bargs, you're saying a bit greasy out there.
Yeah, geez, this F1 race is going to be interesting to watch when it's those guys are racing on these conditions. It was pretty greasy out there. I mean, it's unfortunate for the Orcon Ford. I mean, we just bit of a touch in the first corner, a bit of a touch in the second corner, and it bent the steering arm, so I just sort of got everyone's way and just keep the car for Adelaide. It wasn't worth pushing on.
Easy enough to fix to get it all ready for Adelaide?
Oh, yeah, we probably could have pushed on then if it was a points race, but, you know, I mean, those conditions for what, really, and it's turned out to be a no race anyway, so, you know, it's still a good result. We're still at the pointy end of the field, and hopefully we can carry that through to Adelaide, so, yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Mark.
Go the Fords, I say.
Just down here with Terry Morris. Now, have you had a chance to maybe hear what's happened? How is Paul, and what's the latest?
Paul's fine, Greg. No problem as far as Paul's concerned. He's obviously a bit upset that the car's been totaled because the boys have put so much effort into getting the car here. The new suspension car was going very, very well in the wet conditions, but that's the way it goes.
Did he give you any sort of description, or the team any description on how it happened?
He said something about someone with a rectum had did something in front of him and just drove straight back on the track.
All right, hard luck. We'll stay with this while we're down here because Ross Stone is with us as well. So, Ross, a good result as far as Russell is concerned, but perhaps not the way we wanted the race to end.
No, I don't think anybody wanted to finish like that. We were really hoping for a dry race, a few little changes, get us ready for Adelaide.
How much sort of benefit have you had now that you've had some time in the wet for both Marcus and Russell?
Well, I think it's been a big bonus for us. As I said, nobody wanted to see it finish like that, especially just heard from Terry that Paul's okay, which is the main thing, but I'm sure we're in pretty good shape.
Good stuff, well done.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Morris was actually 9th at the point of that shunt, and Scaife miraculously had got up as far as 8th, so he'd climbed through the field pretty effectively, so those cars were working pretty well in the wet, and there's the scars on the wall from where that VY Commodore wrote its signature down there.
So the bottom line is that we got 2 races out of the V8s across this weekend. The Netspace Showdown produced 2 different winners, and if you like, some sort of parity. Holden, Team Brock, Jason Bright winning race 1. Ford, Stone Brothers Racing, Russell Ingall winning race 2. And the Weather winning race 3. Paul Dumbrell's car gets loaded on. Not as much damage, nowhere near as much damage as Paul Morris's car, but the good thing is that both of these drivers walked away, and if we get this far further on down, can you imagine what the guys in the Celebrity Challenge are thinking? I mean, these conditions make
make normal drivers nervous.
Well, they've had intensive training this week out at Sandown, but I'll bet none of it was in the wet.